The most important part of fantasy hockey is finding values a little bit later in drafts that can pay off massive value for you for the entire season. This is part 2 of a 2-part series for my sleepers video. Now that we have some training camp lines, we know what players are healthy and when players are dealing with injury. This gives us a really solid idea on what players are going to be undervalued in your fantasy drafts. It's going to be a good video, guys, so sit back, relax, and enjoy. Mathew Barzal is the first player for the Sleeper Series 2 video. Now, since we've seen some news throughout training camp, we found out that Matt Barzal is fully healthy again, skating back on the top line and the top power play unit. And it's crazy to me that he is 1 season removed from a point per game season at 80 points in 80 games. That was in 23-24. Yet he's going ADP 144. But the reason for this is he missed a lot of time last year with a knee injury. He was out for about 52 games, which is pretty significant, and played just in 30, had 20 points over that time. But for me, I'm looking past that injured season and going back to how good Barzal has been in the seasons prior, where he's been at or close to a point per game. And now this is a guy that's going to ADP 144 that is a lock for top line, a lock for the top power play unit, and should easily play over 20 minutes per night, which is exactly what we've seen over the last 2 seasons. For me, at this late in drafts, you can't really find a top line center with this much upside. Last year, we had Mark Scheifele that was going around this range as well, that significantly outproduced his ADP. I don't know if Barzal has the scoring and the goal scoring touch that Scheifele had last season, but still the point per game upside that Barzal does possess, going at ADP 144, seems to be a no-brainer sleeper for me in fantasy this season. So we're projecting him for 70 games played, 19 goals, 47 assists, 20 points in the power play, just under 200 shots, and just under 50 hits and blocks. Now, we are projecting him to miss some time this season due to his extensive injury history, but like I always say with injured players, if Barzal does play a full season, he is going to pay off huge value. But even on a per game rate for him playing 70 games this season, he should not be going to ADP 144. I think he should be easily going in the top 100 right now and should end up as a top 100 forward in fantasy hockey this season. A top 100 player, not forward. Probably a top 50 player in fantasy this season. So a lot to love for me for Matt Barzal going at ADP 144 right now. Marco Kasper is the next player for this list, and you may be thinking, who? Now, Kasper was a guy that was a pretty hot waiver wire ad in the second half of last season. And what we're seeing early in training camp right now is that he is going to be centering DeBrincat and Kane, which will likely be their second line, maybe like a line 1A, line 1B, with Larkin being the center on the top line. But that is very, very intriguing for me for a guy that was very good in the second half of last season. Now, if you play in deeper leagues, I would be surprised if Kasper was going in some 12-team leagues that don't include a bunch of sweaty fantasy hockey players. But if not, I think Kasper can basically be almost a last-round pick in 12-team leagues, and then maybe in round 12 or 13 in some of those 14 to 16-team leagues that are a little bit more deeper. But with Kasper here, center left wing eligible in ADP 171 right now, which basically says that he's going at the end of drafts. So over the last 30 games of the season, Marco Kasper had 10 goals, 18 points, 70 shots, and 76 hits. Now, if we extrapolate that to an 82 game pace, 27 goals, 50 points, 191 shots, and 207 hits. Basically a Joel Eriksson-Ek or Vincent Trocheck light, but he does have the left wing eligibility, which makes it even more intriguing. Now, I'm not sure if we'll see power play one time. In early looks in training camp, he isn't on the top power play unit, but even without the top power play unit time, he still has a great shot and hit blend, which makes him very underrated in fantasy drafts right now. And like I said in the last point, I said it before I even looked at it, is that he's a poor man's Vincent Trocheck and Joel Eriksson-Ek. You're getting a guy that has very, very good shot and hit upside while playing alongside 2 elite players in Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane. So there is a lot to love out of Marco Kasper this season. We're projecting for 80 games played, 51 points, 6 points in the power play, 198 shots, 179 hits, and 54 blocks. He should easily outperform his last round ADP, meaning this is a guy that could be a massive sleeper in fantasy this season. Marco Rossi is the next forward up for this video, and with Rossi, we didn't really know what was going to happen. If I'm not mistaken, he requested a trade and then ended up getting a 3-year deal. So it's good to see that he is signed and there's no contract disputes, which means he starts training camp early and we get to see what his line development looks like or deployment looks like. And from what we're seeing right now, he is going to be centering Matt Boldy and Kirill Kaprizov on that top line, as well as playing on the top power play unit. He had a pretty sneaky good season last year, 24 goals and 60 points as a 23-year-old. He managed to increase his points by plus 20. And I think with the new development, seeing him with Kaprizov and Boldy in early looks in the season, we could see him playing easily over 19 minutes per night. And again, I always say this with Minnesota, but if their top players can stay healthy, Kaprizov is the most notable for sure. I could see Rossi becoming a point per game guy, especially playing alongside Kaprizov, who's easily a 100 plus point player, and Boldy, who is about an 80 to 90 point player. Now mix in Rossi at that center position, who was a former first round pick. This could be a massive season for him. The last thing I want to mention about Marco Rossi, and I talked about the injuries with Kaprizov, they dealt with injuries with Joel Eriksson Ek last year as well, is Rossi has not missed a single game in the last 2 years, meaning he's extremely safe. There are some downsides with Rossi, and the main one just being the position eligibility at just a sole center position. I don't think he got winger eligibility last season. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think for the entirety of the season, he will be the sole center position. But at ADP 176, he's not even being drafted right now. If I'm not mistaken, he's about 40% rostered on Yahoo right now. I did have my first draft, so about 40% roster, and this is a guy that we will likely see up at over 80+% at some point this season. So our projections this year are full 82 from Marco Rossi, 29 goals, 38 assists, 15 points in the power play, 168 shots, 50 hits, and 41 blocks. Doesn't really get there with the peripherals, but the point upside and the power play point upside is massive for Rossi this season. A guy that's going really, really late in drafts, and that should pay off massive value. Final forward for this video is Matt Coronato of the Calgary Flames. I know a couple other hockey YouTubers have shouted out Coronato, and this is our time to talk about him. So his position eligibility is just right wing, and what I've found so far in drafts are there's a lot of centers, which there always is, and a lot of left wingers. So it's difficult to find some of that right wing value, and Coronato seems to be a guy that's falling huge in drafts right now, even though he had a pretty strong season. At ADP 161, I think he should pay off good value. And if we look back at last season, an excellent first year with the Flames, scoring 24 goals and 23 assists, and they locked him up for 7 years and $45 million total. And that's a very good deal for a guy that it seems like they trust in, which tells me that he's basically going to be a lock for the top line, which is what we're seeing early in camp, and should be a lock for the top power play unit. And what we've seen in camp so far is he's skating with Jonathan Huberdeau and Nazem Kadri, and on the top power play unit. If you sign a guy for 7 years, $45 million, there's a good chance they're going to give him all the opportunity. But he proved it last year, putting up 47 points, 24 goals in his first full season. So he played 18 plus minutes in the second half, and in that second half, 28 games, he had 10 goals and 17 points. I think he'll be a focal point for that team's offense, who is desperate to score goals. The new deal means he'll get all the opportunity. So I love the upside of Matt Coronato late in drafts this season as he enters his sophomore year. So for this season, we're projecting him 78 games played, 25 goals, 27 assists, 17 of those points on the power play, over 200 shots. He could significantly exceed this. It really depends on the deployment and the opportunity he's getting early on. But from what we're seeing, it seems to be very, very positive outlook for Coronato, and I like him a lot right now at ADP 161. Moving over to defensemen now, we have Morgan Rielly of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, there's been a lot of talk early in training camp on who's going to fill in that Mitch Marner role on the top power play unit. And Brad Treliving has confirmed that it will be Morgan Rielly that will be quarterbacking that top power play unit, with Matthew Nyes now moving to the net front position. So those two guys will now be added to the top power play unit. And I think Rielly has a lot of upside here, especially going this late in drafts right now. Defensemen are very, very scarce. I went over it in my must draft defenseman video. It is difficult to find good defensemen late in drafts, but Rielly seems to be a guy that is falling, and you could easily grab in round 10 or round 9 to be that power play 1 defenseman 3 on your roster. So his last season as a power play 1 defenseman, which was back in 23-24, so 2 seasons ago, 72 games played, 58 points, 20 of those points in the power play, a career high 173 shots, 137 blocks, and almost 100 hits. So close to triple 100 in the peripheral categories, while still putting up 58 points and 20 points on the power play. I think this season he will go back to playing 23 plus minutes per night now that he has that power play 1 opportunity. He's falling a ton in drafts right now, and as I said, he's a perfect defenseman 3 or defenseman 4 for any roster. He has put up at a minimum 40 points in all of his last 4 seasons, speaking more to his upside. So this season, we're projecting him to miss some time with 73 games played, 50 points, 18 of those points in the power play, 150 shots, 61 hits, and 112 blocks. A very good shot and block mix for a defenseman, but now add the point upside. I like Morgan Rielly quite a bit here at ADP 138. Jumping over to the other defenseman on this list, it's going to be Anthony DeAngelo of the New York Islanders. Now, the first thing I want to talk about before I jump into the Anthony DeAngelo is the Matt Schaefer dilemma, the first overall pick of last season to the Islanders. From what we're seeing early in camp right now, Schaefer is not on the top power play unit. From what we've seen, it looks like he's cycling in with Adam Boquist on the second power play unit. And the other thing with Schaefer is he missed a lot of last season with injury, and it may be difficult for them to just immediately throw him into 23 plus minutes per night on the top power play unit. I do think he will make the team and potentially contend with DeAngelo to be that power play 1 defenseman. But for the early going, it seems to be Anthony DeAngelo as that power play 1 guy. So he signed with the Islanders late last season, played just 35 games, put up 19 points, 4 points on the power play, 76 shots on goal. But the big ticket here is the 23 minutes and 21 seconds average time on ice. They don't really have any other big defensemen there with Dobson now gone. And DeAngelo should be skating about 22 plus minutes per night on the top power play unit. So there's a lot to love here from Anthony DeAngelo. I think he's a very, very good upside, very late round lottery ticket pick. Defensemen are very scarce, as I mentioned in the Morgan Rielly bit. And at ADP 162, I think there's a ton of value and very low downside to drafting a guy this late in drafts with the upside to skate on the top power play unit and still play 23 plus minutes per night. So our projections for him this season, 80 games played, 48 points, including 12 goals, 16 of those points in the power play, just under 200 shots, 49 hits, and 89 blocks. We're not drafting Tony DeAngelo to be the big hit and block defenseman. We draft him to be the point-getting upside defenseman that skates on the top power play unit and contributes to your goals, assists, and power play point categories. Okay, this is going to be a tough one here. I know a lot of people aren't going to be happy about seeing Stuart Skinner's name on the screen right now, but maybe you are. With Stuart Skinner this season, and again, goalies are very difficult, but for me with Skinner this season, I think just going that late in drafts on a team that's still projected to be a Stanley Cup contending team, and having Calvin Pickard as the backup that, I mean, if you watched last season in playoffs, he's the most unorthodox goalie I've seen. Not bad, but still don't think he'll be the starter this season. The other note about Stuart Skinner is he did drop, if I'm not mistaken, about 20 pounds going into this year. So that just allows him to be more flexible, quicker movements in the net. I don't know how that will fully translate to in-game, but we'll see what ends up happening. I like the upside with Skinner here as your goalie 2 or 3. I think as a goalie 3, he's probably best given he does carry significant risk. But with Edmonton, they still should be an elite season, and Skinner will benefit from this. The other upside with Skinner is he started at least 50 games in each of the last 3 seasons and has had at least 25 wins. So he's not like a Tristan Jarry where we knew he was going to be a starter with Pittsburgh last year and then faltered very, very early. At least with Skinner, he does have 3 years of sample of being a starter with 50 plus games and 25 plus wins per season. He's a career 906 and a 273 goals against average goaltender. If he can just meet those career averages, say he gets 28 wins, starts 53 games. Oh, I actually have numbers on screen. So 53 games, 31 wins, a 272 and a 902 save percentage. You're taking this guy's like goalie 30 off the board right now, and that means he'll pay off huge upside. So we're projecting him this season. I know I jumped to it early. 53 games played, 31 wins, 145 goals against, 272 goals against average, a 902 save percentage, and just over 1,300 saves. I think there's a lot of upside with Skinner this late. It's a lottery ticket pick, but that's why he's a sleeper this year. And if he ends up being the starter and going back to his career numbers, he should pay off huge value at ADP 132. That will do it for the part 2 of the Sleepers video. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like. And if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video.